If the skies above you are gray, you are feeling so blue. If your cares and burdens seem gray all the whole way through, there's a silver light that shines in the heavenly land. Look by faith and see my friend, trust in His promises grand. Sing and be happy, rest along the goal. Trust in Him.
Hey and welcome, I'm Todd, and we're going to study a class that I've entitled What in the World? Study of some of the parables of Jesus that are sometimes perplexing, and really I think a lot of our study is going to be trying to look at the nature of his parables, what the purpose was, and why he chose to teach in that particular way. If you're wondering if teaching on video is harder or easier than teaching in a room full of people, I will tell you that it is a billion times harder. For one, because I am not a lecturer. I don't generally teach a class that is just a lecture there. I'm just talking to people. I really like the feedback. And so if you're watching this and you want to text me or give me feedback between classes, I'm sure I can incorporate it because that'll help me quite a bit. But the purpose of this study really is to look at the parables and to try to get a little deeper into what the impact is on us. When I taught this before, I taught this a few years ago, and I had a very different approach to it. I was looking at the parables as just each individual story and interpreting them, and that's a good thing, and we're going to do some of that. But the approach that we're taking this time is not just interpreting them, but to understand the purpose behind them, why Jesus taught in the way he did. In particular, we want to understand the principle that is in each of these parables. And it's important that we make that singular because I think as we look through these, we're going to find that if we try to bring a lot of wide sweeping applications out of the parables, we're going to lose the point. Jesus, for the most part, when he taught these things, had a single point he was trying to make, trying to teach a single principle, and we're going to try to grasp that. And then also, really importantly, is try to get the life application out of these. That's one of the reasons I called it What in the World, is because not only because some of these, that was my reaction to them, I'll be honest. When I looked at some of these parables, I read them and I just thought, what in the world is he talking about here? Clearly, he is teaching these things in brilliant ways, and there is something very useful to get out of these. But some of them you look at and you think this doesn't seem logical, and it's hard to understand what it is we're to cull out of that. But the other part of it is, what is it that we're supposed to apply? What is it that right here, right now, we're supposed to be doing with these parables? Let's talk a little bit about the method of parable teaching in general. You know the definition, I think, probably of parable, the idea of setting beside, or actually thrown beside is the more accurate definition of the concept of a parable. You probably know the concepts of an allegory and a metaphor. And an allegory is probably more accurate to the idea of a parable because it is an idea of a story that has a hidden meaning that requires deeper insight in order to understand the meaning. A metaphor can be used in just a lot of different ways, and certainly that's used some in the parables, but it's more just of like a non-literal thing. It's just a non-literal description of something. But we are going to understand that this is a setting beside. It's taking two things and making a correlation between them, taking this everyday concept and understanding the spiritual application of it. You've probably heard the concept that, or the statement that a parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And I don't disagree with that. I think it's a really good description. But I would really like to say that it is an earthly story with an earthly meaning. Now, obviously, it has a spiritual application. It is something that we are trying to see an earthly thing and apply it in our spiritual lives. But the spiritual stuff happens here. We aren't talking about something happening up in this ethereal spiritual realm. The spiritual stuff right now happens here, and it happens in these bodies and with these earthly things, and we have to act in spiritual ways. Now, obviously, someday we'll have a spiritual body and we'll live in a spiritual place. But right now, these stories are intended to teach us something that is spiritual stuff that we're supposed to be doing right here, right now. And that's how Jesus intended it. So I'd like to make the point here that these parables that Jesus used were not the first time that God had used parables in order to have his purpose taught. So I'd like to start and look a little bit at some parables that you're probably familiar with in the Old Testament even, that I think are really good examples of this teaching method. And so if you'll turn to 2 Samuel, that's where we're going to look first here. And I think that the one that I love, that you know where we're going, is in 2 Samuel 12, and is in the teaching of Nathan to David. And it is Nathan trying to convince David that he has done wrong and that what he has done is egregious, and to convince him that he needs to turn and respond to what he's done that's wrong. And he uses this little story, and it seems like a simple story, but it is deep and serious and meaningful in its outcome. And so let's read in 2 Samuel 12, and I'll start reading in verse 1. Then the Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said, "There were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a great many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb, which he bought and nourished. And it grew up together with him and his children. It would eat of his bread and drink of his cup and lie in his bosom, and it was like a daughter to him." And this picture, I think, is just interesting by itself. Just this idea of that there was this poor man who just had this one little precious lamb. It was his friend. The ridiculous way that my wife interacts with our dog Buttercup, the way that she just treats that dog like her little baby. And I've walked in the room before and heard her saying how much she loves me and telling me how cute I am, and then I realized she's talking to the dog. And this is just this precious little animal that is just a member of the family. And so it says it was like a daughter to him. And it says, "Now a traveler came to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take from his own flock or his own herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. Rather, he took the poor man's ewe lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him." Now, we can already tell in this story what just a terrible thing this man did. That this rich man had many flocks, but he took this man's practical family member lamb that he said he laid with it and slept with it, and he took it and he killed it. And anyone would react to that story. Anyone would say, what a terrible thing he did. What an awful guy that he would do that. And David listened to the story. You could tell he was listening sincerely, almost like a king. What do I do about this situation? And he listened to it, and it says in verse 5, "Then David's anger burned greatly against the man, and he said to Nathan, 'As the Lord lives, surely the man who has done this deserves to die. He must make restitution for the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing and had no compassion.'" He recognizes immediately, this man deserves to die, and he's going to make restitution. I'm going to make sure of it fourfold because he had no compassion. And then this extremely powerful moment, this could make movies out of this moment, where Nathan looked at him and said, "You are the man. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, it is I who anointed you king over Israel, and it is I who delivered you from the hand of Saul." It's like, here's what God has to say to you. you're that man. And we know that the reaction of David to that was exactly what was intended, was this emotional reaction. It hit him hard and it cut him to the quick. And that's the purpose of a story like this, where you understand the principle of it and you react to the principle. You don't go to it with hypocrisy. You don't go to it with bias. You just listen to the story and you react, and then you realize, oh, that's me, that I'm the one. And so you see how powerful that story is. There's another one in Ezekiel 17, and we're not going to look at that because I barely understand it, and I don't want to be tested on it. But it is an interesting story where we see in Ezekiel 17 and verse 1, "Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, propound a riddle and speak a parable to the house of Israel." Other versions say an allegory to the house of Israel. Saying, "Thus says the Lord God, a great eagle with great wings, long pinions, and a full plumage of many colors came to Lebanon and took away the top of the cedar, plucked it off the topmost of its young twigs, and brought it to a land of merchants. He set it in the city of traders." And there's this story that goes on, and it relates to Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon and the land of Egypt, and then it relates specifically to the prosperity of Judah. And it's just this story that's told that's intended for the audience to cause them to realize, take a reality and have a different reaction to it. And so I think it's really interesting that it's not just New Testament that we see these things, that we see the allegory used, that we see a parable used. So let's ask the question, and this is going to transition us into Matthew 13. And so go ahead and turn there. We're going to look at Matthew 13. We are very fortunate that if we ask the question, why did Jesus teach in parables? Why did he use this method to teach? He answers it. Now, when he answers it, it is not easy to understand, and we need to really be careful about what he says, but he was asked that exact question. Why do you teach in parables? And we're going to read what he says about that. We're not going to get into the parable of the sower today. We're going to read the first part of it because it leads into his explanation. But I think it's a fair question. I think it is a fair question. Why would Jesus choose a method of teaching where it is indirect, where he's not just listing laws, and he's not just, and let's be honest, many times we would have appreciated that. There are times where we kind of wish he would have just said, hey, here's the list of bad things, here's the list of good things, here's how church should work, here's exactly what you should do in your everyday life. That's not how it's taught, and it's not an accident. It's not because God messed up. He taught us exactly what he wanted, and he inspired writing to teach us exactly what we needed to know. And so that's a fair question. Why teach in a way that's sometimes perplexing or sometimes is challenging and difficult? Why not just get straight to the point? And what we're going to learn is that the concept of the mystery and the revelation of mystery is everything to the teaching of parables and why he taught in parables. And it's part of the answer to his question. And so let's go ahead and turn to Matthew 13. And I want to look at this, and we're going to read the first part of it. And then we're going to look at the question he was asked, and we're going to try to understand his response to it. And we're going to try to get through that today. And then we're going to continue next time looking at the parable of the sower, because it is the explanation of that, which is, it's one of the times where he gives us the full explanation and interpretation of his parable. The explanation of that is part of his answer to the question. So let's take a look at Matthew 13, and we're going to start in verse 1, and we're going to read the parable of the sower that he told, and then the response to that. So let's look here starting in verse 1. The same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times that was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Let's stop there just for a minute, and we just want to talk a little bit about what he said here first. It says, once again, the change in venue, and his change of method and his change of venue happened at the same time. And he goes here and it says he sat in a boat because there was such a huge crowd around him. And he tells this story. And it wasn't just him talking about laws and teaching laws. He told the thing about something that people would have seen very frequently in Palestine, a farmer casting seed out on the soil and planting it. And he talks about the reaction that it had. And we're going to talk about his interpretation of this next time. But right now what we want to see is that he finished that by saying, whoever has ears, let them hear. And the best thing that I can say about that, about why he said that here, it was not saying, hey, listen, hey, y'all, take note of this. It wasn't exactly that. I think it was saying, you sincere people who are listening, who care about what I'm saying, pay attention. There's something deep here. And so I'm not saying he wasn't trying to get them to pay attention, but clearly they were listening to him with rapt attention. They were all standing there watching him on this boat. But we're going to look more at that meaning as we go along. But it is interesting that as he finishes this, he says, whoever has ears, let them hear. There's something here, everybody. You sincere disciples, there's something here that you should listen to. And then, let's go ahead and continue here. Then he says, starting in verse 10, the disciples came to him and asked, why do you speak to the people in parables? He replied, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not understand. And so let's look at that. And so let's stop there for just a minute. And so, once again, this is a fair question. I think I might have asked this question. It's almost, I don't know this, but there was almost maybe a little bit of opinion that they were having here. There may be a slight frustration that they were having. When I think about it in my head, I think about the disciples pulling him aside and saying, hey, why are you talking like this? Why are you saying it like this? Maybe even like, they're not going to get this. Why is it that you're using this method? And I don't know that. I just think that it's the sense I get from the question. It could just be an honest, why are you doing this? Now, this is one of those circumstances where we probably would love for him to have had a different answer. I think there are a lot of times where Jesus had such a brilliant answer to these things, but we would have loved something maybe a little simpler. I think we would have liked him to say, because the story just helps emphasize the topic. Or, when I tell this story, people just get it better, or it makes more sense to them. That is not what he said. And he did not say that these stories are easier to understand. That is, in fact, that is almost the opposite of what he said. He did not say that they're just easier to understand. What he said is, in verse 11, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. And so all of a sudden, in this word secrets, you might have in your version, mysteries. And so we have to understand this idea of mystery. And this is going to go throughout our study. This is not just today, but throughout our study, we have to understand, because his first answer is, because the knowledge of the mystery of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. So clearly there was a differentiation between some enlightened people that had insight and some people who did not have revelation of the mystery, or that this was the time. And I think it's interesting that the answer to his question, we're going to find the answer to the question of why do you teach in parables is found in the parable of the sower. That there is something about this story of the parable of the sower that is the reason that he teaches the parable of the sower. And so he says, because there is something being revealed here. There is something deeper here that needs to be understood that has not yet been understood by them, and now it's happening. And so there is a revelation of mystery here that's coming, and it it is why I have to teach in this way. So let's talk about the idea of mystery, and we're going to look at some other passages in just a minute. But the idea of mystery to us sometimes, we might read a mystery novel or watch a Murder on the Orient Express or something that is a story of a great story that's a mystery. And sometimes to us it's like the word mysterious, like it's magical, or there's something that's a quandary, or that it's impossible, or like a mystery in the case of novels. Not that I've read a ton of mystery novels, but it is that it's a game. It's that it's being hidden on purpose, and that the revelation of it is fun. And so that's not exactly the idea of this kind of mystery. So we need to understand that. But the idea in the New Testament of mystery is that there's something which is true and that can be known, and it can have clarity, that it is a clear truth and it exists, but some people don't know it. I like the way it's said in Matthew 11, and this idea of something being a mystery, and that it's intended that way. Matthew 11 and verse 25, Jesus says, at that time Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for this way was well-pleasing in your sight. So this was not an accident. That even though these aren't exactly the same situation, things being hidden and revealed, or being revealed to certain people and not others, that it was the simple people, he says infants, the sincere, genuine people, that is who his message is for. It's not for the intelligent that are going at it from an extremely enlightened perspective. And so we see the idea that a mystery is not bad. It was done with purpose, and that the revelation of that mystery is part of God's plan. Now it goes on in verse 12 to say, whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Now, once again, this is not perfectly clear to us, and we have to really look at it and try to understand better, because he says, that's why I speak in parables, because whoever has will be given more, and they will have abundance. Whoever does not have, even that will be taken from them. And so obviously, this reminds me of two things, really. First of all, obviously it reminds you of the parable of the talents. And so let's look there just real quick. Let's just read the end of the parable of the talents, Matthew 25 and verse 26. And as we know, they were distributed, and there was praise given to those who took the talents and grew them. And then the one that didn't, the one that just buried it, this is what the master said in verse 26. But his master answered and said to him, you wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now this is so harsh. And this principle clearly is just an axiom, just a truth of God's plan and of the gospel, that to those who have, more shall be given and will have abundance. But to those who don't have, and of course in this context, it is for those who take what they've been given and they handle it properly and they value it and grow it, they're going to keep getting more. But to those who don't, it'll be taken away. And the reaction he has to this man, and I think sometimes our thought is how unfair that is. Come on, the guy didn't lose it at least. I mean, at least the guy gave you back what you first gave to him. But no, I mean, he says, throw him into the outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Just throw him out. He should just be tortured because he did that. Look how serious a response there is to a person who does not value the message, does not go deeper. And so we see that with the parable of the talents, there is a responsibility of this person to take what they've been given and to go deeper and to gain from it and to grow it. James 1 is another passage that I think I don't think I've ever taught a class where I didn't bring up James 1 or Matthew 25 and Ephesians 1, which we'll bring up in a minute. But James 1 is kind of the same kind of concept. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. It is this growth, that these trials that come, instead of us just it breaking us down, we take them and we build on them, and they cause us to grow. And it says that the outcome of that is maturity. The outcome of that is perfection. That the idea of what we receive, we grow it, and we build on it. This is a concept we understand, and I think that it's important for us to see that Jesus' answer here was, these are concepts that are being taught. There is a responsibility to listen to them, and those who are sincere, those who have a good heart, are going to take them, and they're going to build on them, and they're going to go deeper, and they're going to understand what he's talking about. Those who do not, it'll just cause them to wither away. It will do nothing for them. And so we're going to talk a lot more about that, but I wanted to at least introduce that concept. And I think it's interesting that it relates to those things that he taught in other places. Then he goes on after that to say, though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. And so he's just saying these people that are receiving this with an insincere mind, who are attending to attack, it's just going to bounce off of them. It's going to mean nothing to them. But to those who are believers, it means something, and they're going to understand that. And so it may be meaningless to unbelievers, or it might even just cause them to just go away. But it is deeply challenging, and it's important to believers. It is to the sincere believer, it's important to them. And so he goes on, and he even then references Isaiah 6, and he goes on there in Isaiah and references Isaiah 6 verse 9, where it says, you will be ever hearing but never understanding, you will be ever seeing but never perceiving, for this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. So he does this passage, and this is another passage that isn't exactly clear. We're going to refer back to this as we go along. But he says here, these people are hearing but not understanding, seeing but not perceiving. And it says their heart is calloused. In some cases, it says that God has hardened their hearts. And we know that it's not the idea that God causes people, that he wants people to be hardened, or that he causes people's heart to be hardened. But in this example, he's saying that it's their responsibility. They have a responsibility to understand. The passage where it says, otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. Other passages say, lest they might see with their eyes. It almost seems like God doesn't want them to turn. I don't see it that way. It could sound like God is saying he's doing this to them, and he doesn't want them to turn. But in reality, the people have the responsibility, and the people need to understand. And if they would not be hard, if their hearts would not be hardened, they would hear, they would understand, and they would get it if they were truly had a sincere heart. And so there's a very important concept of the mystery here that I just want to clarify. That when we talk about a mystery, it is something that is true, it is something that can be learned, but we just haven't learned it yet. And that's true of just a lot of things in life. There are things that I call it being demystified, that maybe it's just mystifying to us that we don't get it. But then when we see, sometimes our reaction is, oh, that's simple. Is that all it is? I get it now. I think about that my dad we had a sprinkler system when I was growing up. And for a while, he would go work on the sprinkler system. And of course, when you work on a sprinkler system, half the time it's just a fiasco, and there's just geysers. But I always thought about that as just this thing that was just so difficult. Like, how in the world do you figure out how to have pipes in the ground and sprinklers popping up? And There's a thing that turns on at a certain time, and the timer, still the old timers with the little dial on it, a bunch of guys know exactly what I'm talking about. The little dial with the pins in it, I still couldn't set that thing if my life depended on it. But I remember one time when my dad said, much to my chagrin, he said, "Hey, Todd," Saturday morning, "hey, come out. I need your help. We're going to work on the sprinkler system." And in the driveway was a giant trenching machine. And it's this big, loud, gas-powered thing with this arm on it. And it cuts trenches in the yard. And he said, "We're going to install a sprinkler system in the front yard." And I went out there and helped him. I remember helping him, and I was the glue guy. I was the guy who helped him with the glue and got him the pieces. And man, we went out there and trenched that yard, and we hooked it up, and we got a sprinkler system working. There were a few geysers, and there were a few disasters, but after that, we had a sprinkler system. And from then on, that entire concept was demystified to me. It was, okay, I get it. It's just digging a trench, and you're putting pipes in the ground, you're gluing the pieces together. You got to get the right pieces. You hook it up to a pump and to some valves, and then you put a timer on it. Now, still, it's not easy. And if you ask me to install one, do not ask me to come help you install the sprinkler system. But if we did, I could figure it out. But before that, I thought it's impossible. And that's a little bit like what this is, where this is something that just hasn't been taught to us. It just hasn't been revealed. And that's what he's saying here. The knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. And the responsibility is for us to learn it and to dig in and to truly understand. So I hope you understand the purpose of this class, that we're going to really try to delve in and have that same response to the parables that Jesus expected. That he's teaching them, we have to come at them with a sincere heart. We have to understand his focused purpose in every parable, that he has a principle that he wants to teach in every one of them. In almost every case, it is a single principle that he's teaching, and we have to learn how to apply it. And so let's look here at these last couple verses, and then look at a couple corresponding passages, and that'll be it for today. So it says in verse 16, "But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." And what an interesting statement that he says, your understanding brings you blessings. You have an enhanced life. What a great thing it is that you understand it and that you've got it. And he talks about the prophets and the people throughout history that desperately wanted to know it, that they didn't have it revealed to them, that the message of the kingdom, the mystery of the kingdom was not revealed to them. And throughout time, what all the prophets and all these great men that were in the legacy of the church, how much they would have loved and been blessed by this knowledge, but they didn't get it. And how fortunate, and I would say that we are, and that they were, that they received it. How great it is that we receive it and that we're capable of understanding it. So I want to look at just a few passages that show this, that it was true then. It's always been true. It's been true forever, but it just wasn't revealed yet. And so I want to look at a few passages that talk about that before we're done. So Colossians 1, I think, is a really good one. Let's look at Colossians 1 here in verse 24. "Now I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I do my share on behalf of his body, which is the church, in filling up what is lacking in Christ's afflictions. Of this church I was made minister according to the stewardship from God bestowed on me for your benefit, so that I might fully carry out the preaching of the word of God, that is, the mystery which has been hidden from the past ages and generations, but has now been manifested to his saints, to whom God willed to make known what is the riches of his glory, of the mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory." So this, just what a great way of saying that here in Colossians, that now Paul is preaching the word, and he says it is the revelation of this mystery, that in past ages and generations it was hidden, and now it's been manifest. It's been made real in his people, and among the Gentiles, and this revelation of his kingdom, that it is for the Gentiles, it is for everyone, it's for us. And it is Christ in you, the hope of glory. He says that's the mystery, that the Gentiles have Christ in them and that they have hope. That we, not being part of that physical family of God, now we can have hope, that we have Christ. Let's look at Romans 16, and starting in verse 25. Now to him who is able to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery, which has been kept secret for long ages past, but now is manifested, and by the scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the eternal God, has been made known to all the nations, leading to obedience of faith, to the only wise God through Jesus Christ, be the glory forever. Amen. Once again, this idea that throughout time it was not revealed, but now in Jesus Christ it is, that it's been revealed. And now it's to everyone. And that really, I think we have to understand that is a real important concept of the mystery, that it is for everyone, that the gospel is for everyone. So then Ephesians 1, we'll read here finally. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace, which he lavished upon us in all wisdom and insight. He made known to us the mystery of his will, according to his kind intention, which he purposed in him with a view to an administration suitable to the fullness of times, that is, the summing up of all things in Christ, things in heaven and things on earth. This idea that he made known to us this thing that was not known until Christ, and that Christ has revealed it, and it was the purpose he's always had, that everything was going to be under Christ, that Christ would be, it says things would be summed up under him, and that Jesus Christ now is the Savior. And so I just think it's so amazing to see that the answer to the question, he was asked, he taught them this parable of the sower, and they asked, why do you speak to the people like this? And his answer to them was, because I'm revealing a mystery. Because you know it, but not everyone knows it. And I have to reveal it to them in an extremely careful way. I have to reveal it to people who are sincere so that it will cause them to grow. But to those people who are opponents, they will not attack. And there really are a couple takes about that. One is that he's teaching it in such a way so that sincere people will understand it, but opponents will not, or the opponents will not have ammunition. And then the other one is that the only way people will see is if I teach in this way. I've seen it said both ways. I don't know exactly, but I tend to believe that what he's saying is that this is the way for them to recognize the mystery. This is the way for them to understand it. So I hope this was helpful to you. I hope you see why we're calling this What in the World, and why we have to be very careful at the way we approach this. We're going to look at the parable of the sower next time. Read Matthew 13 if you wouldn't mind this week. And next Sunday, what we're going to do is look at the parable of the sower, see who he was talking to, so who he was talking about, and what it is that he meant by teaching this to them. So I appreciate you listening today, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.